Everyone is invited to a reception that will be held again in the lobby there with food. And so you are our guests. I want to thank the Tohono O'odham Nation for making that possible and our other sponsors as well. The Navajo Nation Human Rights Commission, Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights, the National Congress of American Indians, and who did I leave out? I think I got everybody. But anyway, this will be our second panel on lands and resources. And I'll let Ron Trosper, who will be the moderator, take over. I do want to thank Melissa Tatum, who had to leave. She was our last moderator. And then particularly Ron Trosper. Ron is program head for the American Indian Studies program here at the University of Arizona. Some of you may know that the University of Arizona was the first American Indian Studies program in the country. Offers the master's degree and PhD. We're also very lucky to have Angela Riley from UCLA's American Indian Studies program here. I want to welcome her as well. So Ron has very extensive experience in the field of natural resources, not only being an educational leader, but a researcher and a scholar and someone who actually works with tribes. So we're really happy that he would be able to moderate this panel. And just quickly, I'll just give my thanks to the two panelists who've agreed to be here, and maybe you can give a little bit more background, but we're always very honored when our tribal chairs can come and participate. It's very important to have the elected leadership to show that commitment, and we're most fortunate to have Dr. Ned Norris from Tohono O'odham Nation, chairman there, a very close friend and dear friend, and great supporter of the program. And then Carrie, is Carrie back yet? Carrie Dan? She's coming. So as soon as she gets here, we'll kick off.
When do you want us to stop? I was going to ask you, we're scheduled for 5:45. Do you want me to?
How they get on the speakers list, we did have pre-registration. We're trying to get through, keep on schedule. We really appreciate people who do keep on schedule. It might be possible, we'll try and work you in. If you do want to speak on a specific topic or on the open forum, we've really designed the program to have that large amount of time open tomorrow. You can go over to registration and put your name in, and we'll do our best efforts to try and get you in here for your 5 minutes. So, and Carrie is back, so great to see you. And again, thank you to our panelists and to our moderator, Ron Trosper. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ron. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rob. Our plan is that the moderator gets to make a 10-minute speech, so I'll take a little bit of time, and then have each of our panelists speak for 10 minutes, and then we'll start having people come up for the 5-minute presentations. I've arranged to have warning signs right there, so that's great. Thank you. So I'll be sure to watch for that. This particular session is especially relevant to Article 32 of the Declaration. The second clause says, "States shall consult and cooperate in good faith with the indigenous peoples concerning their own representative through their own representative institutions in order to obtain their free and informed consent prior to the approval of any project affecting their lands or territories." And the question then is, what is really free, prior, and informed consent? And I want to tell a brief story from my reservation, which is the Flathead Reservation in Montana, that illustrates some of the problems that the law has with regard to consent. We're a tribe that has a large forest resource, and up until 1985, we had a big change in 1985 that I want to explain. Up until 1985, the Bureau of Indian Affairs would do all of the staff work and prepare a timber sale and bring it to the Tribal Council for their consent. All the work had been done. And I have witnessed the Tribal Council say, well, we don't like this sale that you've brought up. We want it in 3 smaller sales. We want this and that environmental condition put in. And the Bureau would say, well, we can go back and rework it, but it'll take us a while. And the tribe had about half of the tribe's income came from the forest. So this business of a delay would make the Tribal Council pause for a moment because they had per capita payments to make, they had budgets to make. And generally, the Tribal Council would reluctantly consent and the forest harvesting would go ahead. In 1985, however, we negotiated a new lease for our hydroelectric dam. And instead of having $2 million a year from the lease, we moved up to $9 million. Lo and behold, the very next week, or several weeks later, I'm not exactly what the timing was, but the Bureau of Indian Affairs came in and said, well, here's a timber sale we'd like you to approve. And the council said, well, no, we want you to break it into 3 smaller ones, and we want you to set up an interdisciplinary team to evaluate the environmental effect. We want to have the elders committee review the sale before we approve it. That's going to take a long time. That's going to really take a long time. And Mickey Pablo, the chair, was very happy to smile and say, take all the time you need. And he also liked to point out that he went to the first interdisciplinary team, and the representative from the Bureau of Indian Affairs got up to moderate the team meeting, and he put on the chalkboard the list of issues that needed to be addressed, and the first one was income. And Mickey said, well, we did consider income, but we had a longer list, and so they went on to the other things. The point of this is that just signing and just consenting, you have to look to the conditions and the situation of the consent. And so the tribe instituted ID teams, instituted a process of having the elders of both Salish and Kootenai culture committees look at the sales. And it changed the system tremendously. I got a little bit of amusement at what I like to call the macho foresters decided to transfer to other reservations. We kept the folks that were willing to work for the Tribal Council. That was good. When the time to write a new plan for the forest arrived, the Tribal Council had previously refused to approve the Bureau-written plan. The tribe contracted with an outside consultant and essentially wrote their own own plan and organized their own consultation process with the tribal public and persuaded the Bureau of Indian Affairs over its objections to finance an Environmental Policy Act review of the plan so that we had broad consultation. The point that I'm trying to make is at Flathead, at least with regard to forestry and with regard, I think, to hydroelectric development, we've gotten to the realized stage that Jim spoke about. We're to that point, but that's only for a specific reason, and that's because of the good luck that we have for having this hydroelectric dam that allows us to have the resources to do the get truly informed and take control of the forestry resource. I'm pretty sure we'll hear that in many other situations, the tribes don't have the resources to become informed. They find that they aren't free to consent or not because they're kind of under the gun with regard to budget. And that's something that needs to be looked at. But at least what we need to know is how can we tell when we've got to realize? Well, we can tell when the tribe is writing the long-term plan, when the tribe is determining the timing of the harvesting, and when a process is used to make sure that each sale is approved properly. That's my comments. I'd like to turn the floor over to Dr. Ned Norris. I've just met Chairman Norris, and I looked at our list of the many, many things that he's done. He's worked a lot for the tribe. He's been head of, I don't think, he's been head, it looks like he's been head of everything at some time or other. But I wanted to thank him in particular for serving on the search committee for the hiring of the new president of the University of Arizona. So that's the one thing I will highlight before I turn the floor over to Dr. Norris. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Here.
Thank you very much, and thank you for that introduction. And I'm going to go ahead and stick to my prepared comments, because if I don't, we'll be here for another 2 hours. So I'll go ahead and start. Just wanted to thank you for this opportunity to speak today about this important and inspiring declaration. Wanted to also acknowledge and thank Rapporteur Anaya and other dignitaries that are here in the audience today. The beauty of this declaration is that everyone approaches it from a different perspective. These different viewpoints can produce a healthy debate about the serious issues facing Indigenous peoples around the world. It allows for a constructive discussion that can lead to a positive solution and real change. Unfortunately, the conversation becomes problematic when groups politicize the declaration to suit particular agendas on both the right and the left. We saw this with the Bush administration, their opposition to the declaration, and we've seen it with other groups trying to use the declaration to advance their causes. We must not allow these efforts to co-opt the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples to impact its universal importance. We can't allow this to become an issue that divides us into our particular ideology niches. We must engage with one another about the rights and principles embodied in this document so that we can work together to build a better future for Native peoples. This declaration has particular significance for the Tohono O'odham Nation. Given our unique history, we have lived on the lands that make up southern Arizona or northern Mexico since time immemorial. Historically, the O'odham have inhabited land that went south into what is today Sonora, Mexico, north past what is today Phoenix, west to the Gulf of California, and east to the San Pedro River. The Hohokam, which the O'odham are direct descendants of, first settled mainly along the Salt, the Gila, and the Santa Cruz rivers. They learned how to live in the desert land and were able to grow a variety of crops. From the early 18th century to the present, the O'odham land was occupied by foreign governments. With the independence of the Republic of Mexico, the O'odham fell under Mexican rule. Then in 1853, through the Gadsden Purchase or Treaty of La Mesela, O'odham land was divided almost in half between the United States of America and Mexico. Today, approximately 9 O'odham communities remain south of the international border. Ensuring that our members on both sides of the border can visit relatives and attend cultural events without difficulty remains a major issue that the nation continues to grapple with. Article 36 of the Declaration specifically addresses these concerns, affirming the right of Indigenous peoples divided by international borders to maintain and develop contact with members across the borders. The Declaration also instructs states to consult with Indigenous populations to ensure the full exercise and implementation of this right. Obtaining free movement across the border for all of them remains a challenge to this day, as increased border security measures and other restrictions have made such travel increasingly difficult. Many of our members, particularly our elders, lack the birth certificates necessary to obtain a passport. The Obama administration's adoption of the Declaration has served as an important reaffirmation of the federal government's commitment to facilitating cross-border travel and connections for the Tohono Nation and other tribes divided by international borders. The nation is currently working with the federal government to develop an enhanced tribal identification card to be used in place of a passport while meeting new security requirements. But many issues related to cross-border travel by O'odham remain unresolved. The declaration further bolsters the need for close cooperation between the federal government and the nation to uphold the nation's right to maintain contact and connection with its members in Mexico. Another perfect example of the Declaration's relevance to the issues confronting us today can be found in the proposed Rosemont copper mine in the Chuiduac, Santa Rita Mountains south of Tucson. The location of the Rosemont Copper Project is on the nation's ancestral lands and would destroy cultural and archaeological sites containing numerous funerary objects, sacred objects, and other archaeological and cultural items, as well as permanently alter the culture and natural landscapes of the area. More specifically, the proposed Rosemont mine and associated proposed Tucson Electric Power Company power line to be constructed to the Rosemont mine site will result in the destruction of 111 cultural sites. 77 are prehistoric, 29 expected to contain human remains. This is in the mine area, and an additional 7 sites along the power line right-of-way. Article 11 of the Declaration reaffirms that Indigenous peoples have, quote, the right to maintain, protect, and develop the past, present, and future of their cultures, such as archaeological and historical sites, end quote. Article 8 provides that, quote, Indigenous peoples and individuals have the right not to be subjected to destruction of their culture, end quote. It is these rights that the Rosemont Project threatens. The entire Santa Rita Mountains was traditionally used by the Tohono for hunting, gathering, and many other culturally significant purposes, and has significant importance amongst the O'odham. All societies value and cherish places that tell a story of their ancestry to future generations. Imagine 20 plus years of excavation, blasting and application of harmful chemicals to leach out minerals to such culturally and historically significant places. And you will understand why the Tohono Nation Legislative Council, as well as the Santa Rita districts, has passed resolutions opposing this dangerous project. For at least 2 decades, our people will not be able to access traditional sites used for gathering and collecting of materials for basket making, the collection of medicine plants, special clays for pottery, special soils for making paints for pottery, vision quest sites, and springs. As a result of this mine, Santa Ritas will be forever degraded, and our people's traditions associated with this area will be lost forever. In my view, the destruction of the cultural sites and landscapes on this scale is nothing short of cultural genocide. As Associate Justice Brennan of the United States Supreme Court said in Lyon v. Northwest Indian Cemetery Association case, quote, where dogma lies at the heart of Western religions, Native Americans' faith is intricately bound to the use of the land. The specific nature of Indian religious practice derives from the Native American perception that land itself a sacred living being, end quote. Native American people within the United States, as well as indigenous peoples around the world, are facing human rights violations that are holdover from the colonial period, when indigenous peoples were subjugated and their equal rights not legally recognized. The Rosemont Mine and Power Line represents a continuation of this process. It is my firm belief the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples has and will continue to facilitate respectful and productive dialogue, the challenge facing Native communities. Indigenous people must have a voice on policies that impact them as individuals and communities. The governments that have adopted this declaration must and will be held to their commitments. We must all work together to ensure that the rights of Native peoples are treated with the same dedication as all other human rights. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairman Norris, and thank you for emphasizing the fact that it's the ancestral lands, not just the reservation lands, that are important for applying the principles of the Declaration. Our next speaker is also going to stress, I'm sure, the importance of the ancestral lands. Carrie Dan is a Western Shoshone elder who has fought for a long time for her rights and the rights of the Shoshone to the land in Nevada and southern Idaho. She and her sister were very active, and they were actually fined for allowing livestock to graze near their ranch. They've been fighting the United States government, the nuclear industry, and gold mining corporations for a very long time, and she's been leading her struggle for many years. She received the Right Livelihood Award in 1993. Some call that an alternative Nobel Prize for exemplary courage and perseverance in asserting the rights of Indigenous peoples to their land. So I'd like to turn the mic over to Carrie for presentation.
Good afternoon. I don't know if I deserve a standing ovation. Whether I deserved it or not, I got it anyway. Well, one of the things that we all talk about is land, you know. As Indigenous people, we do not look at land as real estate. We look at the land as a mother of life. Not only to the one with 2 legs, but to all that live on the earth. Those with 6, 8 legs, 4 legs, 2 legs, wings, fins. This is a mother of life. Our grandmother used to tell us that as we are, you know, dependent on the land, all life comes from land. Our food comes from land. Our clothing comes from land. Everything that we have today comes from this land. And when we look at the land and we look at the destruction that is being done, I would especially say by the gold mining back home, are one of my most sacred areas, which is around Mount Dinavo, are being destroyed today by gold mining companies, especially Barrick Gold. On the other side of the mountain is also an area they called Horse Canyon. In this area, I have seen as many as 10 drill rigs drilling away to see if there's any gold left in those mountains. And you know, when you see 10 drill rigs out somewhere, you know darn well that there is gold over there somewhere. And recently I read in the newspapers there's 8 miles of gold somewhere in there that they have found, which means that they're going to rip the whole country apart. If anybody has ever seen an open pit mine, it is sad to see and think, as an Indigenous person, how this must hurt our mother to have her ripped apart. by gold mining companies and others that drill for things underground, under her skin and through her body. It's sad for me to look at these things and then try not to believe that this is really happening, but it is happening. It's happening all over where there is mining. Maybe some have copper mining, some have silver mining, some have, we also got other type of minings going on over there. I don't recall, it's called magnesium or something that they're they're, you know, getting water applications from the state of Nevada to, you know, to get the water rights so they can pump water. And I can say one thing about this, it's a good thing maybe that's happening because we have local white ranchers, local people, white people, that is opposing that mine because of destruction of the water that will happen. And it's about time, I say, a lot of people are waking up to the fact that mining does destroy water. In our area, we have, I believe, almost every gold mining company out there pumps water so they can get to the gold. They have to pump that water out. And it's a shame because we as indigenous peoples, we know water represents life. And when we see that type of water being pumped out, we know life is being pumped out. Maybe not our life, but the life of our future generations that's not here yet, that's still of the earth. We have to look at these things. But how do you stop such going on? There is possibly no way. I've thought of many ways in which we can do things, but we don't have the population to do that. And I do believe in civil disobedience, and that's what I'm talking about. If you can't get civil disobedience among your own people, certainly there's a lot of friendly other colors of people that's more than willing to help you. And I've thought about that. I've thought about a lot of things. How can we stop this gold mining and it's going on? Gold is worth what? $1,700 an ounce? Maybe $1,900, I don't know what it is. But it's pretty much, you know, pretty high. And for people to, you know, then you have the workers that says, well, you want to take our jobs away. It's not that we want to take their jobs away. We want to save the earth for the future generations. Their generation is now. But, you know, if they have children, like I told my own son-in-law, I said, if you're going to have any children, you better start thinking about what are you doing. I said, you know, you got to protect the land, you got to protect the earth, you got to protect the water, you got to protect all of these things that represents life. And if you cannot do so, then you should not have any children. You shouldn't bring children into the world to suffer, because they're the ones that's going to be suffering. Maybe not you, but they will. They may not be able to produce any children. If they do have children, some of the children may be deformed in many ways. We don't know. We don't know what can happen. We also have the test site, you know, where they test the nuclear bombs. And we also, they were talking about, however, Obama, I believe, said no, is the nuclear waste dump in Yucca Mountain. So we have all of these things within our country. We don't approve of it. They certainly don't come to us, you know, for approval. Maybe they might go to some of their tribal councils. I don't know, because I'm not a member of the tribal council or, you know, belong to any so-called tribe. And I guess Jim knows me better than that. I don't know the meaning of a tribe. I don't know what a tribe is. When you attempt to read the Bible, they talk about tribes. To me, it means the very beginning of man to learn how to do things. And if we're a tribe, is that where we are at? Is that what they talk about? There's few words that within our Western Shoshone Defense Project Office, I said we can't use. And one is tribe. The other is Rome. And there's another one. I don't recall what it was, but it's one of those words that we're not supposed to use. I think if you use the word Rome, that means we are like a four-legged person or a four-legged animal, that we are not fully developed as a human being. That's my interpretation. I could be wrong, but that is my interpretation. So there's words that when you use the English language, please understand the words that you're using, because when you use it this way, yet it might mean something else in another way. I don't know. But English language is you have to know what you're talking about. Anyway, we we flew in from Elko yesterday, and it took us 9 hours to get here. I was fully disgusted. I was thinking maybe 4 at the most to get from Elko to Phoenix. But it took us 9 hours. And I want to say to the people that make all of these arrangements, when you make arrangements and you're making it for the elderly, please make it as short as possible, the time that they're going to fly as short as possible, so that, you know, they can get there and still not be so really tired. We were really tired yesterday, spent 9 hours in the airports. I think we spent more time in the airport than we did on the airplane. But anyway, that was one of our lessons that we learned, is that, you know, please ask your people that's organizing these things for you to make it short as possible. And I can't believe some of the things the air flights do anyway. The further you fly, the less they tell me it costs. If you fly from here directly to wherever you're going, especially back east, they say it costs more for you to make a direct flight than it does when you fly from here either to Dallas or to Atlanta, Georgia. Those are a few things of civilized society that I don't understand yet. Maybe someday I might, I don't know. Anyway, I want to thank Jim for being here with us today. I met Jim a long time ago. I think he was still a teenager. And I want to thank him for the work that he is doing for all Indigenous people around the globe. And I think that whenever we work for, you know, UN or whatever it is, international organizations, remember, we're not only working for our own people here, but we're working for all Indigenous peoples, no matter where they live. So he has great responsibility. He has a lot hanging over his shoulder, and I guess we can all slap him down sooner or later if he gets out of hand. I don't know. But anyway, I want to thank you guys for inviting us to be here. We're enjoying it. The weather is nice. It's not hot. It's not cold, but it's just right. It's nice outside. Now, when I go back, I'll tell my friends and family, well, the weather was nice. It's not hot as they say it was, and it's not as cold. So it was good. It was pleasant. Thank you all.
And thank you very
Can I go
much,
back
and
to my
thanks to
seat now?
both of our first speakers for getting us really going here on the land and resources theme, and especially the issues of mines, copper and gold. What we'll do now is call up the first 5 speakers to sit in the reserved seats, and then we'll allocate 5 minutes each and proceed till the end of the hour. So the first people to come up are Kenneth Hall, Fran Benally, who will speak for Damon Watahomoji, Jose Natus, Dwayne Yazzie, and David Garcia. And Kenneth, you're speaking first.
Testing. Okay. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can everyone hear?
Can you hear me back there? I got to scoot down a little bit. Can you raise this up a little bit? There we go. First of all, I'd like to thank the Honorable James Anaya for his presence, and then also the panel of experts, the elderly that are here, the tribal leaders, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ken Hall. I am a member of the 3 affiliated tribes, the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikaran Nation on Fort Berthold Indian Reservation in North Dakota. We were at one time a prosperous tribe of more than close to 12 million acres. And the 1851 Fort Laramie Treaty, of course, we shrunk up just short of 1 million acres, about 985,000 acres. And in the early 1900s, they opened our reservation up for homesteading because we were people of the land and the river and had rich agriculture and food and horses. I'd like to take just a second to introduce my wife back here, Carrie Hall, back here, and then my daughter here, my 8-year-old daughter, Faith, who's doing a school project. And she is why I'm motivated to come today. Because we have to look beyond what one gentleman said, in the box. We have to look to the future, the next generation and the generations to come. Not all tribes are visionaries. Not all tribes think in the future. So we have roughly about 530,000 acres that are held in trust by the federal government. And we know all of the injustices that our people have encountered and endured. We survived the smallpox epidemic. And then the government flooded our lands out in the early 1950s. And you might have seen the picture where one of our chairmen was signing the document, and he had one hand on his cheek here and a tear coming down on the other cheek. And stories of rooftops going down the river and water coming up to the doorstep. People had to get out and go to higher ground. So it's a recent history that we've endured. And now we're sitting on one of the biggest oil plays in the country, called the Bakken oil play. And we've survived what I just told you about, and now we're facing another giant. And it's called the oil under our land, where these oil companies are coming from all over the country to extract our resources. And our fiduciary has failed us terribly, once again. Where the leasing was chaotic from $23 an acre to $1,000, where just off the reservation they were getting close to $10,000 an acre for the minerals. And so there's been a breach of trust. And there's a whole list of concerns and issues, like the Cotton Petroleum case, where it went all the way to the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court decided states could tax trust property. So it's not like they had enough by taking all our land. Now they want our resources. And the state of North Dakota has received to date, since 2008, $120 million from our resources, and not gave one penny back for infrastructure. So where is the level playing field, like one gentleman said earlier? Where is the level playing field? The riverbed issue. The state is claiming our riverbed. Time is up. But we have no infrastructure in place. Now our future projections, we have about close to 300 wells on our reservation right now producing. There's going to be another 200 to 300 by the end of this year, and 800 to 900 in the next 5 years. We were number 9 in the country as far as oil production. We shot up to number 3, and by the end of this year, we'll be number 2, only behind the state of Texas. It's a national security issue, but we need help. We need help on social issues, on law enforcement issues, on roads, on water, on the whole gamut of issues. And so I know my time is up, but I was just getting started.
Well,
but thank you for your time.
thank you very much. Now, my notes say the next speaker is Fern Benally speaking for Damon. Is that correct? Okay. Go ahead. Kenneth just handed some papers to our special rapporteur, and I was told to remind folks that if you have some prepared statements, please give them to us, and we'll keep them. Right?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Honorable James and Anaya, Special Rapporteur on the rights of the Indigenous people, for allowing me this opportunity to come before you today to speak on behalf of the Havasupai tribe. This statement I'm reading will be a statement of Damon Watahamaji. He's keepers of the secret of the Grand Canyon of the Havasupai tribe. When I say I, it will be him speaking, and I will speak his words for him. Due to economy and location of his reservation, he is not able to make it here. I am Watahamajiga, keepers of the secrets, an original descendant of the first Havasupai tribe that are removed from the Grand Canyon National Park. My grandfather was the sub-chief of our people and a war captain who resided here at the national park, just as his parents before him. Our ancestors taught that we are the anthropocentric and the theocentric tribes of this region. This is based on nature-centered beings who we've entrusted as forbidding gods to provide supernatural substances for water, rich soil, and good crops. This, in return, is fed to the deities to usher in a time of prophecies of how our living should be instructed as an ancient matriarchal society with the eldest known language and the culture of the Hokan and the Yum tribes of Southwest. On behalf of the Havasupai, the people of the blue-green waters, I appreciate the human rights inquiry led by James and Anaya, the UN Special Rapporteur on Indigenous peoples, focusing on the plight of Indigenous peoples in the U.S. and how the standards of the Declaration are reflected in U.S. law and policy, and needed reforms and good practices. The Havasupai Tribal Council and the Havasupai people strongly oppose uranium mining in the Grand Canyon to protect our cultural values, traditional beliefs and uses, practices, sacred places, water, plants, and wildlife. The Grand Canyon is a place of prayer for the well-being of the world. Protection of this sacred place affects the climate and weather patterns of the earth. We support the Department of the Interior's January 2012 decision to withdraw 1 million acres of public land and ban and prohibit new mining claims and mine development on existing claims without valid permits. In March, we joined conservation groups to defend the U.S. Department of the Interior's 20-year ban on new uranium mining claims on across 1 million acres of public lands adjacent to the Grand Canyon. We appeal to you today for your urgent intervention under the Declaration and international law to protect Havasupai territory, the Grand Canyon and the Colorado River, a drinking water source for tens of millions of people. The current mining ban does not include new uranium mining from Denison mines, active mining by Vane, V-A-N-E Minerals, the mine in the Kaibab Forest, and 3 permits approved for EZ, Pine Knot, and Canyon mines, the 2 north of Grand Canyon and 1 near Val, south of Tucson. I see the effects of uranium mining in Havasupai homeland and for my Navajo neighbors who do not have access to safe drinking water. Today, let's make a stand to end this capitalistic nephilism and demonic conquest of nuclear enticements to all indigenous nations globally. Our freedom requires we stand together to create a movement that is greater than any movement on the face of this earth. If our belief systems and life ways are free of Gomatra, our traditions will be pure, clean, and free from political usurpations. We refuse to be viewed as insipid or desiccated. As the firstborn warriors of the Grand Canyon, we refuse to become the next millennium's world terrorists by allowing mega nuclear industrial complex mining industries to mine in the Grand Canyon. Respectfully, Damon Watahamaji, and as a Navajo Nation member, I stand, and we all stand in solidarity in the protection of the Grand Canyon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Jose Matus.
I think it's to go over you. Thank you. I'm very happy to be here and honored to present before you. My name is Jose Matus, and I am a member of the Pascua Yaqui tribe. But a disclaimer, I would like to say that I don't represent the tribe. I am here to represent the Yaqui community of South Tucson. As a ceremonial leader and elder, I have been involved in bringing in our Yaqui participants, ceremonial participants across the international border of the U.S. and Mexico. And in 1974, when I started, I realized that our indigenous people did not have the right to enter into the United States, that they had to have permission, they have to have documents. Through the years, since 1974, things have changed. From officials that were very cooperative, to ones that were not so cooperative, to ones that were very restrictive, to ones that were totally abusive in many respects. That is because of the laws that were being changed by the United States government. The laws that were made and implemented in the southern border that overlooked and forgot our indigenous communities. So since then, we have been abused at the border. We have our ceremonial regalia has been destroyed. We have been verbally abused. I've been detained a couple of times. During the time when I was bringing in individuals from Yaqui, picking them up in Nogales, I was stopped at gunpoint by the Border Patrol. and saying I was a coyote, and they were asking me how much was the going rate. Fortunately, all individuals there had permits, and that is one of the provisional agreements that we have right now with Homeland Security, is that each individual we bring in now without documents is paroled in. We are also in the process of getting visas for a lot of our participants. But the problem is that oftentimes our elders do not have birth certificates. Some of our elders cannot meet the requirement of solvency. Then you need to produce, at least show proof that you have money in the bank and you own land. So those are one of the problems that we have in dealing with border issues. But on top of all that, we have been having problems since 1990, more and more, because of the situation with 9/11. The increase in the Patriot Act, the continued developing of the border wall, and all the border patrols and military people in the border area that have also impede our ability to cross and recross the border. So the constructions of walls and the U.S. government anti-immigration and border enhancement policies continue to divide indigenous communities along the southern border.
Our next speaker is Jose Matus.
I think we should go over you. Thank you. I'm very happy to be here and honored to present before you. My name is Jose Matus, and I am a member of the Pasco Yaqui tribe. But a disclaimer, I would like to say that I don't represent the tribe. I am here to represent the Yaqui community of South Tucson. As a ceremonial leader and elder, I have been involved in bringing in our Yaqui participants, ceremonial participants across the international border of the U.S. and Mexico. And in 1974, when I started, I realized that our indigenous people did not have the right to enter into the United States, that they had to have permission, they have to have documents. Through the years, since 1974, things have changed. From officials that were very cooperative, to one that were not so cooperative, to one that were very restrictive, to one that were totally abusive in many respects. That is because of the laws that were being changed by the United States government. The laws that were made and implemented in the southern border that overlooked and forgot our indigenous communities. So since then, we have been abused at the border. We have our ceremonial regalia has been destroyed. We have been verbally abused. I've been detained a couple of times. During the time when I was bringing in individuals from Yaqui, picking them up in Nogales, I was stopped at gunpoint by the Border Patrol and saying I was a coyote, and they were asking me how much was the going rate. Fortunately, all individuals there had permits, and that is one of the provisional agreements that we have right now with Homeland Security, is that each individual we bring in now without documents is paroled in. We are also in the process of getting visas for a lot of our participants. But the problem is that oftentimes our elders do not have birth certificates. Some of our elders cannot meet the requirement of solvency. Then you need to produce, at least show proof that you have money in the bank and you own land. So those are one of the problems that we have in dealing with border issues. But on top of all that, we have been having problems in 1990 more and more because of the situation with 9/11. The increase in the Patriot Act, the continued developing of the border wall, and all the border patrols and military people in the border area that have also impede our ability to cross and recross the border. So the constructions of walls and the U.S. government anti-immigration and border enhancement policies continue to divide indigenous communities along the southern border. U.S. government policies promote institutional racism, hatred, and fail to protect the limited sovereignty rights and self-determination of indigenous people. So real quickly, since I only have 1 minute, and there's other items that I would like to share with you. However, we call upon and encourage tribal nation governments to endorse the UN Declaration and call upon all indigenous peoples, nations, tribes, and organizations to use it, cite it, and assert it, and insist on full compliance and implementation of our interactions with federal government and all of their subsidiaries, state government, local governments, and and corporations licensed under the laws of these governments. We also call the establishment of just and effective mechanism and processes in the U.S. and other states to ensure oversight and implementation of their human rights obligations, including the nation-to-nation treaties and agreements that conclude with indigenous people, and that these mechanisms and processes be created and implemented in full partnership with indigenous people. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Jose. Dwayne, Yazi is speaking next, and then you'll be next after that, David.
First, my appreciation to Chairman and the Odom Nation for allowing us to be here on your lands. And then I pay homage to our big sister, Carrie Dan, to many of us a hero. Professor Anaya, I make my statement today as a private indigenous person. A basic human right that must be made clear and established as a priority is the human right to water. It is an established right in international law, yet we need to focus on it and define it as in terms of the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. There was an emerging recognition of the right to water in various international instruments and conventions, so that the United Nations General Assembly adopted the resolution entitled that established the human right to water and sanitation. The operative statement in the resolution is that the United Nations declares the right to safe and clean drinking water and sanitation as a human right that is essential for the full enjoyment of all life and all human rights. The resolution calls upon states and international organizations to find a means to make the right a meaningful one, and it welcomes the actions of the Human Rights Council to have an independent expert look into the means for the council to take more effective action to secure the right. Given that action, the Special Rapporteur should revisit the right in light of the specific provisions of the Declaration and make a report to the council that asks it to specifically address the human right of indigenous peoples to water. The Declaration is clear in stating that indigenous individuals have the rights to water, to life, physical, mental integrity, liberty, and security of person. Article 25 provides that indigenous peoples have the right to maintain and strengthen their distinctive spiritual relationship with their traditionally owned and otherwise occupied and used lands, territories, waters, and coastal areas, and other resources, and to uphold their responsibilities to future generations in this regard. Article 26, Part 1 says the Indigenous peoples have the right to lands, territories, and resources which they have traditionally owned, occupied, or otherwise used or acquired. Finally, and perhaps the most important for the security of the right, Article 28 secures the right of redress and remedies for the taking of indigenous lands and resources. The term indigenous, traditionally owned, means not simple rights to water by implication, as with the federal winners doctrine of water rights, but the reserved treaty property right to water and resources, as stated in the Navajo Treaty of 1868. We must be directly mindful of the obligation of indigenous peoples and American Indian tribal leaders to uphold their responsibilities to future generations in maintenance and strengthening of their people's relationship to lands and waters. That is the command of Article 25. It is our obligation as leaders to recognize and support the right to water for all our people and for our generations to come. Therefore, I ask the Special Rapporteur, the Human Rights Council, the General Assembly, and all pertinent treaty and human rights bodies of the United Nations to pay particular attention to the human right of indigenous peoples to water and sanitation, and to closely examine their situation in the United States in light of the upcoming epic struggle for water. Water is life. Water is our life. Without it, we cannot live and we cannot survive. Please give this fundamental human right particular attention and emphasis, and make it a priority in your work. We say we are in the fight for our lives, and I wonder what that means. Our sister Carrie talked about our children, our grandchildren, and to say that we are in a fight for our lives, does that mean if we lose this fight that we lose our life, that we lose our earth? Well, it seems like that's what it means. And my late dad, we talked about some of these issues, and the troubling times that we are coming into. He said that we would be watched over from above, and that can be interpreted in different ways. Above us, at least by organizational structure, is the United States government. Above that is the United Nations. And to me, in some regard, what my dad said, that we would be watched over by, from above, to some sense, I take that to mean that is the special brother that we have in you, Mr. Anaya. I realize that what we say, what we ask you to do, is such a tremendous burden, a tremendous responsibility that we place upon you. But nevertheless, what we give you, what we ask you to do, provides us that opportunity for that continuation of our life.
Thank you.
You are one key to us not fighting, not losing this fight. We must win this fight, and you are one of our great warriors that needs to help make that happen. Thank you.
All right, our next speaker is going to be David Garcia, and while he is getting ready, I'd like Serrana Riggs, Jack Whitehorse, Mark Charles, and James Zion to come down, and Glenna Begay to come down and line up.
Thank you. My name is David Garcia. I am a member of the Tohono O'odham Nation and a former member of the Legislative Council for the Tohono O'odham Nation, and just want to recognize the chairman again, Chairman Norris, the former chairman Edward Manuel, and also the vice chairman of Sanavir District. Mr. Anaya, in October of the 8th and 9th of 2011, you were the keynote speaker here in this very, well, across the building here, as when the Indigenous People Law Policy and Program protecting and promoting the Indigenous people's rights, when you were their keynote speaker here. And in that, just prior to your keynote speech and soon after, we talked about whether or not you had looked at what Mr. Joe Garcia spoke on, which goes back to what I would just also present to you, and whether or not it was clear on that document, because I am a signator to that document. It's addressing the violations and rights of citizens, of legal residents, violations of rights of migrants and members of their families, and violations of rights of citizens and of members of the Tohono O'odham nations and indigenous peoples. I just want to be real clear and real brief, because you did say earlier that when you opened up that you're going to be meeting with the White House. And I want to be real clear that, President Clinton passed an executive order. And it's very clear how that executive order is supposed to be dealt with within the executive branch, dealing with departments under his executive branch and sub-agencies. That the chairman earlier cited the Article 36, which speaks to the heart of where we are in our own backyard in terms of the international border. But again, it speaks to, as you know or may not know, that the Tohono O'odham Nation has two United States Border Patrol substations / Tohono O'odham Police Department that the district that I am a member of approved. Thereafter, the Tohono O'odham Nation, by resolution, approved those two substations. But I seriously want to address under Homeland Security, and in that executive order that President Obama reaffirmed, it's very clear how that protocol is supposed to happen. Of course, again, it goes back to, it's one thing to cite the articles, it's the other thing to act on those articles. And I have been an activist for probably over 40 years. And as I said before, I have sat on the Tribal Council and served 2 terms. It's an entirely different when we're dealing with the federal government and the tribal governments. So I ask you, when I cited those sections, that we are asking for an inquiry addressing how the Tribal Council or the tribal government is working with Homeland Security in terms of protecting the human rights and civil rights of those migrants that are processed and ready for deportation, men and women and children. And they're all not nationals from the country of Mexico. The other thing is that it goes back to the heart of that article, Article 36, addressing our tribal members who live in the country of Mexico in the state of Sonora. The former chairman, Edward Manuel, signed that resolution that Joe Garcia cited. He was the first chairman that signed that resolution that recognized the 9 communities and the traditional O'odham leaders. That resolution has never been done away with. The second chairwoman, Vivian Juan Saunders, signed the second resolution, reaffirming that resolution as to how that protocol will take place as far as meetings with the tribal government and the traditional O'odham leaders. The chairman, Ned Norris Jr., is well aware of that. He has 3 letters in his office, CC, to the Legislative Council, readdressing that resolution. And why is because I have been involved with Joe Garcia and others trying to coming to a resolution how those meetings will be held. And it speaks to the heart of this whole issue of how our O'odham people are being denied entry into the United States. So again, I just want to be real clear that it's not only the Tohono O'odham people. We're talking about Gila River, Salt River, and Akichin O'odham people as well. So again, this is your backyard. This is what's happening in the Southwest. There's very little bit that's being spoken about Canada and the United States. But when we talk about homeland security, it is clear to me that when we talk about tribal governments, you and I and a lot of other people, some of us are not privileged to those meetings within the tribal government. A lot of us are not privileged to the meetings that are held in Washington, D.C. So I ask you, Mr. Anaya, that you carry the message and speak for the unseen and the unheard, because you're in a position as the United Nations Rapporteur to speak for what it says right behind you, to protect the human rights of people all over the world.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Sarana Riggs.
Hello. Good morning, everybody. I'm Sarana Riggs. I'm from the Navajo Nation. I would just like to say thank you for letting me speak up. I'm here representing the youth from the Navajo and Hopi tribes. The youth I'm talking about is my 10-year-old son, my 12-year-old son, and also the people who are outside at this time of Fort Defiance and Window Rock, who are in silent protest, sitting outside because they're not allowed inside council chambers. President Shelley had talked about, on April 5th, there was a secret meeting conducted in Tuba City with McCain, Kyle, and Shelley and the selected leaders. And on the Hopi side at Munkopi Legacy Inn, there was Hopi leaders in a closed-off meeting with also the senators. And nobody was informed about this. The youth found out, and they wanted to voice their concerns. So from then, we were told that 7 meetings would occur throughout the Navajo Nation, which, as many of you know, is a wide, big reservation. So how is it that the people can be heard throughout only in 7 chapter meetings, and only we are told that the elders can only speak? I have no disrespect to elders, that's where our teachings come from. But we are told as youth not to be speaking because we're English speaking. Only if you're native speaking, you can speak Navajo. You are allowed to. But if you can text, if you can comment, you can Twitter, you can Facebook, and you have an email address, you can write those comments and address the leaders. So with that, the youth are really frustrated. They want to know at this moment, how is it that our voices are being concerned? How is it that our leaders are not deleting those messages? How is it that we want safe drinking water? We don't want the water to go anywhere else. We do need this water. We need it for agriculture. Diabetes is a huge factor on the reservation. Contamination is a huge factor also. So as the youth, as my 10-year-old son says, why are they not considering these? Why is it that we're told to stand outside? And at these meetings, there are a lot of police force. There's over 20 vehicles with a mobile command system outside with snipers on the roof pointed at our young children who are told to be outside because they're not allowed inside. And they want to know, why is there guns pointed at us? Why is there metal detectors going over us? What do we have? All we have is our phones. All we have is to take pictures. That's their voice. Their voice is the media. Their voice is Facebook. And on behalf of them, I'm just here speaking. And like I said, they're in Fort Defiance right now. It's cold, it's raining, and they just want their voices to be heard. And since I'm here, they would like me to express that. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Jack Whitehorse.
Good afternoon. Good evening. I just heard it was morning, now it's afternoon, now it's evening, I guess. But thank you for allowing me to speak, Mr. Anaya, and your panelists up there. Again, you've mentioned me. My name is Jack Whitehorse, And I would like to speak as a leader of the Navajo people, the grassroots people, the local community that are still out there and their voices are unheard. Everybody take a look at your wristwatch. One of these days, the indigenous people or the Native American people are going to be up to par to build their own wristwatches. And I think that's what education is all about. The youth are continuing to be oppressed. The middle-aged people are continuing to be oppressed, not only by the United States government, but by their own local organizations and tribal nations, their own local government. I think there's a difference between the nation government and the local people's own government called self-determination. And I would like to emphasize that the only probably good practices that need to be improved on is the Code of Federal Regulations for a lot of us Indian tribes that operate and get funded under these agreements by Congress that initiate these funding plans and initiate sort of acknowledging the local rights of local natives to run their own communities, run their own schools, and receive funding under the Code of Federal Regulations. A lot of times the local government leaders that are elected operate under these circumstances are still not seeing how the fundings get funneled through the centralized government. And you're talking about self-determination. A lot of times the transparency is not there. The people themselves need to know that they have a freedom to walk and congregate and communicate with their leaders. Unfortunately, the leaders that have been in existence for the last 20 or 20 plus years have not emphasized to have their own community participate in meetings as we've just heard. But I would like to just say thank you for giving us a sort of prior listing, beginning to give us a prior listing through the United Nations and the Declaration of Indigenous Rights of Human Rights that we're supposed to have. I don't see why that's happening. Since time immemorial, before Arizona government became into existence, before the 13 colonists came into existence, before the United States was even formed, the indigenous aboriginal people of this country in North America had their own government or so-called type of government. They picked a leader. In Navajo, they were called Natani. There were different leaders of several areas in these sorts. And yet, the United States government has yet to acknowledge that we are not a bunch of savages. We are not a bunch of free birds flying around in the air wondering where we're going to fly to or gather food. But guess what? Those birds are still existing. Who's watching over them? And so is the indigenous Native American people of this North American country, the Aboriginal people. I don't think there was a Bering Strait that we came across, or so we were told in the history books. We are from this country, and we should be able to stand our ground and have them come to our tables. I think that's why education played an important role for a lot of us Native American people that still can't grasp the concept that we need to either open up our own agreements and have the United States agree to what we can do for ourselves. However, we also need to do away with this sort of BIA consultation, U.S. government consultation, because guess what? A lot of the local people and the grassroots people who have a real concern for those laws and effects that affect them cannot go to Montana, Alaska, sit at the airport for 4 hours to begin with because they're just not funded by their local government to get there as leaders. Maybe some of the leaders are. But the Navajo people, the grassroots, we don't carry credit card, and most definitely we're not given P cards, as I last heard in the Navajo Times. However, we do have more educated people that need to congregate and help us go through the Code of Federal Regulations and give us more rights. And the bottom line is we need better qualified people structured into the Code of Federal Regulations that help us. So we need people with bachelor's degrees and master's degrees in those areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mark Charles.
Yate, Mark Charles Yenisha, Sin Bakadina, Nishlin, do Tohaglini Bashichin, Sin Bakadina Bashiche, do Torchini Bashinala. I live in Fort Defiance, Arizona, and I would like to share 2 short stories with you today. Mr. Anaya, I want to thank you for coming here. I do a lot of travel. I travel around the country. I even travel around the world and have the privilege of meeting with indigenous peoples in all sorts of places. One of the questions I get asked frequently is, how does it feel to be Native American and live in this country? How does it feel to be Native and know that you're indigenous to this land and yet be under this other government that doesn't fully respect you? And I searched for years after I got that question to try to understand and try to articulate what it felt like. And this is the analogy that I came up with. I said, it feels like our Native American peoples are an old grandmother who owns a large and beautiful house. And years ago, some people came into our house and they locked us upstairs in the bedroom. Today, our house is full of people. They're sitting on our furniture, they're eating our food, they're having a party in our house. They've even unlocked the door to our bedroom so we can come out if we want, but it's much later and we're tired, we're old, we're weak, and we're sick. So we can't or we don't come out. But the thing that hurts the most, the thing that is the most painful about this entire situation is that nobody from this party ever comes upstairs. No one seeks us out in the bedroom. No one sits down next to us on the bed, looks us in the eye, and simply says, thank you. Thank you for letting us be in your house. When you talk about land, when you talk about resources, you have 2 roles that we rarely talk about in this country. One is the role of host, and one is the role of guest. And I would argue that over the 400 years history of this country, the guests, the undocumented immigrants who came into this land, have played their cards in such a way that now they believe they are our hosts and we are their guests. And that is not right. I want to tell you another story. On December 19 of 2009, President Obama signed the 2010 Defense Department Appropriations Bill, H.R. 3326. This bill is a 67-page document outlining the appropriations for the Department of Defense. On page 45 of this document is inserted, buried, I would say, a generic apology to Native Americans on behalf of the citizens of the United States of America. This apology was never announced by the White House. It was never read by our president. It was signed in a closed-to-the-press bill signing. Nobody has heard about it. The elders sitting on my reservation have no idea that this oppressive government that sent them to boarding schools and washed their mouth out with soap has now apologized to them. That is so disrespectful. It is hurtful. When I heard about this, I was beside myself. And so I decided right then that I was going to go to the Capitol and I was going to read this document up to and including the apology. And so I called and I reserved the space in front of the U.S. Capitol for December 19 of 2012. And I plan to host a public reading of the 2010 Department of Defense Appropriations Bill. Because I want my elders, I want my people to know and to hear it being read from the seat of power of this country that they have been apologized to. I want them to be able to form an opinion and to talk about this and discuss it. Is this appropriate or is it not? And I want you to invite the United Nations to come and stand with us. Many of these nations colonized our country. All of these nations have sent immigrants to this country. This is not just a United States of America issue. This is a global issue. And I would like you to share it with your colleagues at the United Nations. They are welcome to stand with us on December 19 of 2012 to read and to hear read the 2010 Department of Defense Appropriations Bill. Whenever I travel to the reservation, around my reservation, I always bring gifts to my elders. Chairman Norris, this is some of the best coffee that you can find anywhere. Starbucks Via. I travel with it everywhere that I go. Thank you for allowing us to be on your land today. Mr. Anaya, this is how you make Navajo fry bread. It's different from Indian fry bread because it's made with bluebird flour. This is made right on our reservation, or near our reservation. On behalf, if my relatives will allow me, on behalf of the indigenous people of this land, I want to thank you for coming upstairs, for seeking us out in the bedroom, for sitting down next to us on the bed, for looking us in the eye and saying, I want to hear your voice. You have heard our voice today. You will hear it tonight. You will hear it tomorrow. I ask you to tell the world. Thank you. Here's some flour. Here's some coffee.
James, I want you to file that flower away with all the other statements. Our next speaker is James Zion.
I'm going to share my gift with you. Have some coffee.
The only story I can tell is to relate the one of a Navajo gentleman who went to see a marriage counselor who was very concerned about whether he was sensitive to his wife's needs. And the counselor said to the Navajo gentleman, "What's your wife's favorite flower?" And he thought and said, "Bluebird?" Bluebird flower, never. The topic, Mr. Moderator, is free and informed consent. And I'm speaking as an advocate for individuals, a number of whom grannies are here, and organizations, to try to approach the concept from their point of view. There are some big issues on my radar screen where I'm asked to translate and interpret. Energy, water, lands. I point out that Kristen Ruppel of Montana State University has done some outstanding research on lands and pointed out that American federal policy on lands has now divided individual allottees and their governments and created conflict that needs to be dealt with. But what is the problem that we have with free and informed consent? Well, first of all, decisions made without meaningful notice mean nothing. And I will give as an example the work of the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs that has held some extremely important hearings on energy, where individuals have not had the opportunity to know what is going on in proposed federal energy policy, much of which I suggest is dictated by energy companies, and they're going to come over and they're going to push that on us without any meaningful notice to my client groups. Consent is meaningless without information effectively delivered to ordinary grassroots people and their organizations. Consent is meaningless without effective participation. We had a speaker a few minutes ago speak to that issue and speak to that issue very well. It is meaningless without open decision making. And I'll speak to the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs, and I'll say that there are other folks and organizations on my list. And it is meaningless without remedies. I found it ironic when I was at the concluding days of the debate over the declaration that the strongest state opposition to effective remedies for indigenous people were when the representatives of the United States and Russia stood up to share the same opposition to effective remedies for indigenous peoples. So those are the barriers. And one of the barriers that I am seeing that troubles me greatly is this. the lack of civil society concepts in Indian country where there is recognition that non-governmental institutions, and I'm looking at my friend, the director of the National Indian Youth Council here, and others of some clients of mine who are here, that they are being ignored, excluded, minimalized, mocked, and not being allowed to participate in the debate. And I just want to conclude by mentioning one particular example that troubles me deeply. And I'm going to talk about the United States Interior Department's policy on consultation, which is being mirrored and echoed by the other government agencies, where they say that only tribal leaders can be consulted, that only Indian tribes can be consulted, not NGOs like the National Indian Youth Council, not Indian individuals, and as you know, Mr. Special Rapporteur, that violates the principles that were so carefully hammered out in Geneva. And I want to close by saying, this process today is magnificent because you are helping the United Nations articulate standards that we can use as advocates to come back to our own governments. The participation standards were magnificent, and I'm speaking to them today. Others are being developed. Please continue this process. Please continue to have these doors open, and I thank you as an advocate, as a lawyer.
Thank you very much. Our last speaker of the afternoon is going to be Glenna Begay, who I understand has an interpreter with her. Is that right?
Yeah, again, my name is Fern Benali, and I will interpret for my grandma, Glenna Begay. She is my grandma and also my neighbor. And unfortunately, we have a fence line between us. It is called a partition fence. She lives on the Hopi partition land, and I live on the Navajo partition land.
Shishlahot ehegi ebayashtido. Ile do onni de hositli latinli. Well, the Diego in an hidden skadskita, or wata and a saddle legend a meatly. A poeti chin the aya. One is that the ayi kahako. A cosheda conscious chiroda conisia ho at ho. At a cons that is shadow down shakaya. The litchin a yabaka a keheste. Those are action bestow able keheste. A co a yadi people they will get a year on his not stop. He said, Lenny Hayi Kaho, a with auto a. Legends has all says the on has all the Tafaki. A tiki that then he in the archer, a big honey. He oyan that in his j. A hot a yabek a kayi kabat on it, a quick carry in a conit. Ado quest twin that nation a git do yuk a nakhi. Ado saik at evich and dahi na. Kohot abek in his and dahi na yeti. Pipa they will yet hitch and hagi kahagi. A tiki yek at the door less. Though a nas not as of course I ye. When ye queb and his fashion. Ado a yati Rashin Lakshaiki, the she coach and Nash needle. Ado at a via 8 a catch in Kornash. Akot ente ishi to tak hoten nada to akhaja tateyata. Akwet ashagane da kweshia ahot eto da kwesata. Ako to sha ko ofota shichne ko. To da kwesh in nasla to da kwesh limigin na khin to da enaz kwe bekin shnanigi slago evits aj to shinne ako kot ya bahates sin le kwashi shahad ne to lesako.
Yaten, Honorable Special Rapporteur, James Anaya, and all who are here to listen to my voice. I am a traditional Navajo elder born on Black Mesa in the land of the Navajo Nation. Lena says I do not speak, write, or read English and live a subsistence lifestyle herding sheep. My family has been living on Black Mesa for all the generations of their lives, time again and again. And my people have gone on the long walk. And to Fort Sumner, I am of the Anasazi people because they are my ancestors. And I live by Big Mountain where there's coal mining coming my way. And when coal mine comes my way, I will be asked to relocate. Right now, I'm being asked to relocate by the BIA people because I live on the deportation land side. I will not go anywhere because this is where I was born and raised. And that's where my livelihood is. All the livestock that I own, I take care of my sheep and my goats. They are there, and that has been my home. My people are suffering from many effects of the Peabody coal mining operations on Black Mesa. Strip mining is forbidden in the basic teaching. They are tearing apart the life of our mother, Black Mesa, who is a female sacred mountain. The dust and the coal dust and the blasting dust, you name it, whatever dust from the coal operation is thick in the horizons in the morning because of the overnight drag line operations. My people are exposed to it. My family members, my relatives, my friends, and my neighbors, they die from these things. The surface waters are poisoned and destroyed. Sites that are the sole source of sacredness. Medicinal plants have been bulldozed over. I live only 5 miles from the former Black Mesa complex. I do not have a little electricity and running water. My roads never get graded, especially in climate weather. I do not want to relocate for any reason at all. Rather, it's because of the law that was passed by the federal government to relocate myself and my people, nor because of a coal mine that is digging up the resources from what is believed to be a liver of Black Mesa. My family's been here for generations. I'm born here. My roots are here where I live. I make my offerings and prayers and conduct ceremonies. I have hosted a historical meeting with the United Nations on Human Rights. Black Mesa was the focus of the investigation. This happened in 1997. At this meeting, Thayer Scudder, California Institute of Technology, an anthropologist who has testified before Congress, is recognized by a leading international anthropological organization said forced relocation in our case, which is my case, is among the worst cases of involuntary community resettlement he's ever seen in the world. He also said the destructive impact of involuntary relocation on people who have strong religious ties and cultural ties to the land. This is a case of ethnic cleansing. Upon resignation, federal relocation commissions call relocation genocide, comparing what has happened to me and my family as to what Hitler did to the Jewish people. And I have friends who are Jews, and I know they have told me. Peabody has no respect for the dead. Peabody has destroyed thousands of ancient Anasazi cliff houses, burial sites, and sacred sites, the cemeteries. They've dug up Anasazi burials in my customary use area. And this breaks my heart. There are areas where graves have mounds of dirt upon them, and our ceremonial objects have been bulldozed over. Some of our elders have died, and even whilst they look for the remains of their relatives, there are young ones that have been buried in these woods, the trees that Peabody bulldozes over. My family, my relatives have been overcome with respiratory diseases. Some have died with silicosis. As did Roy So, his last wish to was to protect his burial and sacred sites from Peabody destruction, including a site where you can hear the thunder in the hill. That thunder we no longer hear because that shrine, the sacred shrine, has been bulldozed over. The BIA impound our sheep, our horses, and they give us no rights on the Hopi partition land. They dismantle our wells where we don't have safe drinking water, nor any water, because they say it's contaminated with uranium and arsenic. They deny us water resources. Water hauler trucks wait at the fence line to bring us waters that we were requested, but we are refused that. We are never told how our water got contaminated. We are refused access to that data. We don't know if it was dismantled because of contamination, or is it just harassment. My cornfield, it's barren because it does not grow the corn, because there is no water underneath the ground. Because there is no rain. When it snows, it is not wet and there's no moisture. It's just like sand that just flows around. Therefore, the communication between Mother Earth and Father Sky has been disrupted due to excessive pumping of our groundwater. Precious, pristine water was pumped by Peabody to slurry cold, and we point them to them when we've seen rocks fall, and we see fixtures in the earth, but everybody turns away and not listen to our voice. But thank you today for listening to my voice. These sinkholes are very evident in Red Lake and Black Mesa. It is harder now for me. I feel like I'm still on the long walk. My people are having a hard time with the uranium. People are dying. My coal miner friends, family are dying off. Peabody retirees are diagnosed with black lung and silicosis. I am opposed to mining, relocation, and destruction of our sacred land, female Black Mesa. To protect endangered sacred, historic, and cultural sites in and adjacent to Black Mesa mining area. My family has created an interactive GIS map using ARC software entitled Nihikeya, Our Land, at www.saveblackmesa.org. And if you take the opportunity to see this, I appreciate it. Why we cannot relocate, why we cannot allow it to be desecrated. And my recommendation is that President Obama should fulfill his pledge on December 16, 2010 and sign a binding declaration to show his commitment to the indigenous people. I pray the UN Commission on Human Rights support our petition to the UNESCO to have Black Mesa declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and the matriarchs declared the testimonial living human treasures. And I also call for an urgent UN intervention, because we have no water, we have no housing, no civil nor human rights.
Thank you.
Respectfully submitted by Glenna McGay, as she told me to finish my statement for me. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. Well, James, that concludes this session. And our opening speakers started with issues that were reinforced throughout the session from the floor. The mining, water, uranium, coal, grassroots people not being able to be heard, boarding, crossing issues. It was quite a full session. And thank you for listening to it all. Now, I think we have some announcements.
We have a reception and everyone is invited. And this is a chance to talk to each other. We'll reconvene tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock.
The things, 8 for breakfast, it says, and 8:30, the language, culture, sacred site session.
Good luck, that's all I can say.
It's been very difficult so far.
If you can get, the so-called sports people and the local people, that they're